Trudeau, a blackface. It just doesn't seem to be going away. Many media outlets around the world are still talking about it and whether or not Liberal leader Justin Trudeau is racist. Political contributor Brian Lilley has been following this story, and you followed Mr. Trudeau as well, Brian. I can't believe Justin Trudeau is a racist. But what is the Liberal leader saying now? I know he's apologized.
Well, he and his supporters want to say, look, I'm not a racist. Okay, but you committed racist acts at least 3 times. And when asked, are there more? He says, well, I don't want to be definitive. When he's asked, have you dressed in blackface since 2001? He dodges the question. And when asked specifically about that video that Global News obtained, the one that looks like he's in total blackface, he's got on an afro type wig, total blackface on his face, his arms, his hands, even on his knees that you can see through his ripped jeans. He's also wearing a t-shirt with bananas on it, and it looks like something shoved down the front of his pants, a large object of some kind. When he was asked specifically, what was that costume? Justin Trudeau said, I've been open with Canadians, and I'll continue to be open with Canadians. When the reporter said, with respect, Prime Minister, that's not what I asked you. I asked what the costume was. He said, I've been open with Canadians, and I'll continue to be open with Canadians. Hal, I actually did something that I've never done. I laughed out loud at a politician giving what he thought was a serious answer.
Wow. Now, you've been involved with some polling that's been done recently, specifically on this blackface case. And while you found the Canadian public is ready to cut Mr. Trudeau some slack, there's been a little bit of drop for the grits in several polls.
Yeah, so I've been doing polling with John Wright from DART. He used to be with Ipsos. He learned under Angus Reid. So, a guy who has been in the polling business for more than 30 years on his own and, learned from the grandfather of the polling business in Canada, Angus Reid. John Wright went, we had asked him some questions, and I think we talked about this previously. We asked about, women, do you believe when Justin Trudeau says he's a feminist? And only 24% of Canadian women believe he's a feminist. But we asked that question before blackface. And after blackface happened, I said, John, you've got to ask, what do Canadians think about blackface? Well, only 45% think he's a hypocrite on this. 55% say no. 76% say it's a long time ago. About 66% say we'll cut him some slack. So the Canadian public is kind of looking at this and going, nah, whatever. We're not overly bothered by it. I think they're fairly cynical about politicians. But then when you ask, who will you vote for? The latest numbers from DART compared to the poll that we did with them on September 11th, the day the election was called, we were in the field. So the election was called in the morning. We were in the field that afternoon and evening asking people, who would you vote for if an election was happening today? The Conservatives are up 2 points from 35 to 37. The Liberals are down 2 points from 32 to 30. So that's a 7-point spread nationally. In Ontario, the Liberals dropped 6 points. The Conservatives went up, I think, by 2. The NDP also went up by 2. So the NDP's at 18 points. The Liberals are at 34, and the Conservatives are at about 36, 37, in that range. These are getting close to majority numbers for Andrew Scheer when you look at the totality, the regional breakdowns, the national numbers. He's not quite there yet, but that's the trend line. Since that came out, I want to point out that Angus Reid and Ipsos have also come out with polls that show similar numbers. Campaign Research had similar numbers on the weekend, showing that there is a lead in Ontario, because I know out west, every time I talk to people out west, Hal, they keep saying, what's wrong with you folks in Ontario? Can't you see? Well, numbers are changing, things are fluid, and, while people are saying they're willing to cut Trudeau some slack, they may not be as willing to vote for him.
Now, in an attempt to divert attention away from blackface, the Liberals put out some pretty big policy proposals here, Brian. Some include helping to lower cell phone bills and a gun ban. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, and the problem with them for the Liberals is that they're putting out these big, bold policy announcements to change the channel from blackface. They don't want me talking to you about blackface. They don't want you talking over the fence to your neighbor. What was the character's name in Tim Allen's show, Tool Time or whatever? They don't want you talking over the fence to your neighbors about blackface. They want you talking about policy. Justin Trudeau's going to ban military-style assault weapons. Okay, what's a military style assault weapon? You've only listed the AR-15. Well, rifles like that. Well, which rifles? We'll get back to you. Um, okay, so you're going to lower cell phone bills. How? Well, we'll talk to the telecom operators. All right. Well, you can talk to them, but that doesn't necessarily lower the bills. How will you actually do it? We'll get back to you. We'll bring in national pharmacare. Well, what does that actually mean? Does it mean that if I have a drug coverage plan under my employer, that it gets replaced by a government plan? We'll get back to you. Everything is "we'll get back to you." I'm a little bit shocked because I've covered I can't tell you how many elections federally and provincially at this point. Uh, and I've never had so many times where there's no details there. The Conservatives and the NDP are putting forward their proposals and releasing costing by the parliamentary budget officer as they do it. And so people can pick it apart. I know more details about Jagmeet Singh and the NDP's National Pharmacare plan and his dental plan than I know about Justin Trudeau's. I wasn't at Jagmeet Singh's, but I was at Justin Trudeau's when he was in Hamilton the other day. So he's trying to change the channel, but he won't give us any detail. Even in Burnaby, just yesterday, he's talking about his climate plan. Okay, how will you get to net zero? We'll get back to you. It reminds me of that long forgotten movie from the '80s about last night. Rob Lowe asking all the questions, and John Belushi just says, "At this point, we don't know."
Now, a story we recently had on BCN was that the Monk debate on foreign policy was cancelled because Justin Trudeau is simply not participating. How many debates will he actually be participating in, Brian?
He'll be participating in 3. And you might say, well, wait a minute. No, he's only doing one, right? He's doing the one in English. He's doing the official government sanctioned debate by the Leaders Debate Commission that his government set up. So he's doing that one in English and he's doing that one in French. Okay, yes, but he also said that he would do the TVA debate, which in TVA, Hal, we used to work with a
Yep.
company affiliated with TVA. They are the most popular broadcaster in Quebec. They are the most popular French language broadcaster across the country. And so, just like Maclean's and City TV said, we want to host a debate, and they did, as they did in 2015. Uh, TVA put that forward. Justin Trudeau turned down Maclean's and City TV. He didn't show up, and they had an empty podium there for him. And the other leaders showed up. Monk said that they were going to go ahead with or without him, and then that they would have an empty chair or an empty podium. They announced, I guess it was overnight, Monday into Tuesday, that that wasn't going to be the case. They were going to cancel. I guess there wasn't enough interest without Trudeau there. But he's doing 2 debates in French and 1 in English. That boggles the mind. And his argument was, well, these aren't the official debates, and I will only do the official debates. But then he accepted TVA. And as Elizabeth May said to me a couple of weeks ago when I talked to her about this, she said she was really bothered by that because TVA will not invite her. They will not put her on the stage. And she said, Brian, in 2015, Justin Trudeau not only said I should be in the debates as the Green Party leader, but because I was the only woman and he wanted his daughters to see a woman on stage, yet he accepted the TVA debate. So he blew it when, in terms of official versus non-official. He blew it in terms of whether the Green Party leader, the only female candidate, would be accepted.
Federal Conservative leader Andrew Scheer continues to make policy promises almost as though, Brian, blackface didn't even happen. Is that his strategy? Let's move on.
Yeah, it kind of is. He will take shots. If he's asked about Justin Trudeau and blackface, he will take shots at him, just like the NDP leader Jagmeet Singh will. They will answer that. But both of them are kind of carrying on as if, okay, well, that's over there. Oh, okay, blackface, yeah, over there. We'll acknowledge it exists, but we're going to keep talking about our policies. And it's kind of a smart move for both leaders because as our polling showed, yeah, Canadians are kind of shrugging their shoulders over this. They don't know what to make of it, and they say it's a long time ago. So, all right, what do you do in that case? You keep making your policy proposals, and when asked, you criticize the other guy. So it's a smart move from both parties. I'm sure the Green Party leader Elizabeth May, People's Party leader Maxime Bernier are doing that, but none of them are threatening to form government. They're not even close. But the NDP and the Conservatives, they're moving forward, and so Scheer's making policy proposal after policy proposal, and he's aiming at one key demographic: suburban women, mothers who are looking after the family budget and saying, we're going to help you get ahead.
The NDP is trying to break through, but apparently, Brian, they're not having much luck, even with the blackface scandal. Didn't that help Jagmeet Singh at all?
Well, I think it does in terms of people saying, I'm willing to give him some credit, but we haven't seen a huge movement in terms of national poll numbers. Now, I will point out that DART poll that I mentioned earlier showed that in Ontario, the NDP moved up 2 points. So that's good for them because, Ontario, British Columbia, that tends to be their heartland. It used to be Saskatchewan. They had one MP, or I guess a couple of MPs there in the last election. They had one in Alberta. They're going to lose a number of those in this election. So they've got to keep Alberta. They've got to keep British Columbia. So that move up has got to do something. Look, I've been highly critical of Jagmeet Singh since he won the NDP leadership. He was this young, charismatic guy. He was going to be the NDP antidote to Justin Trudeau. He was very interesting on so many fronts. And then he won the NDP leadership and kind of fell flat until the day the election kicked off. And I've been saying this from the beginning, that on September 11th forward, he has done well. And then a week later, when blackface broke, he has given honest, heartfelt answers. But, as I was just mentioning, he's focused on policy and he's staying on policy. That's a good thing for him. It's a good thing for his party. And, maybe it will show up in the polls a little while from now. I don't know that we've seen the end of blackface having its impact on the polls. And liberals that I'm talking to, Hal, they say their biggest worry isn't that a drop in the polls. It's that people don't show up on voting day. And if they don't show up, that helps the NDP and that helps the Conservatives.
Now, one of the ideas the NDP is also bringing up is a veto to Quebec, offering them a veto when it comes to pipelines. That could potentially hurt our energy sector even more, Brian.
It really could. And, Jagmeet Singh initially announced it as a veto for Quebec and then asked about it, made it sound like it was a veto for any province that didn't want a pipeline, which was kind of like taking the Constitution and putting it through one of those home shredders you put over a garbage can and just saying, oh, yeah, we don't care about federal jurisdiction. We're not worried about it at all. He was asked about it subsequently and said, oh, no, that's not what I meant. And yet that's what it sounded like. But then he said, well, it's for Quebec because Quebec's different. That's not going to win him votes elsewhere. That may win him some votes, help save him some seats in Quebec, but giving Quebec special powers that the rest of the country doesn't hold never wins you support elsewhere in the country.
Now, the BC government won a court injunction of the turn off the tap laws. Can you explain?
Yeah, so, an appeals court said that this was unconstitutional, that you couldn't go forward. So it's a temporary injunction. It's not a full ruling. It will continue to go forward. But, this goes back to what I told you a while ago, Hal. Remember Bill Morneau, who's now my MP, living in downtown Toronto. Bill Morneau, the guy who stood up and said Trans Mountain's going to be built. We'll get shovels in the ground this year. All of that. That was in May of 2018. And we still don't have shovels in the ground. We still don't have construction. And earlier this year, I told you the only people making money off this would be lawyers. Well, lawyers are still making money because BC challenged Alberta's turn off the tap laws. So it's going to go back and forth. This is one court ruling. It's a temporary injunction, but it just shows that this is an issue that's going to be litigated on all fronts until somebody finally comes in and says, enough is enough. We're going to move forward. We have to move forward and perhaps invokes some federal powers that maybe we haven't seen. I don't know if it's the notwithstanding clause. I don't know what it is, but we need to actually be able to move forward on this because it's ridiculous, the level of litigation that we have over a simple pipeline project. And I want to point out that Justin Trudeau flew to Burnaby He flew across the country to make his climate change announcement in Burnaby in Jagmeet Singh's riding to say that he would, go to net zero emissions by 2050. And the NDP's response was a simple news release that said, "You bought a pipeline." So, there's hypocrisy on all sides and litigation on all sides. And I really feel for the people that are trying to make a living off the oil patch right now.
And the fun has just begun with the campaigning here. One of our regular contributors, Brian Lilley, joining me once again from Toronto. Thanks so much, Brian.
Thank you, Hal.